Hello everyone, Kitch here. Welcome back to The Forgotten Coast, Episode 7, Finishing Beacon Racers. This is a good episode today because we actually get to finish something off, and I know from my own experience of watching a lot of YouTube, a lot of Planet Coaster videos, one of the most frustrating things is you always want to see something actually finished. And a lot of times as Planet Coaster builders, and I do this myself, we often start something, build a little bit, and then we get sidetracked to do something else, come back to it, and then 8 episodes later we finish something up. And I really want to try my best in this series to not get into that habit. Sometimes it is advantageous to build that way just because you don't have to necessarily think of every possible idea right then and there. You know, sometimes building very linear like that can be very challenging. But for the sake of the show here, I want to try to finish things off as best I can as I work on them, within reason, of course. And just I'm hoping that will be better for the viewers. You guys get to see areas completely get fleshed out and finished up as we go. And like I've talked about in previous episodes, we'll have a season for every area of the park, so can guarantee you that Stormrock Island will be done by the end of Season 1, which is probably not too far. I think I had said 10 episodes was my goal. I have a feeling it's going to be 11, 12, 18, 19. No, I'm kidding. I don't know. Probably 12 is my guess, but we will see. I don't want to make any promises. What are we building right now? We are working on a little building right here on the corner. I wanted something on the corner that had a little bit of height. I didn't like how open this deck area was by the slides. And the reason being just because I felt like the rock, the island, the storm rock had to have that jagged presence everywhere. I wanted it to have that ruggedness all over, and I felt like a smooth open deck area where with all these chairs with no like undulation and elevation, and it just seemed a little off. Something seemed off, so I wanted to try to put a little building here, and this was actually kind of challenging because I didn't have a lot of room to work with, and with the walls in this game, as we know, are 4 by 4 meters typically, 4 meters in width at least, and that makes it difficult. As you can see here, this is not a 4 meter wide building, so I have to go with this other piece, this haunted house wooden trim work kind of flipped upside down, to replicate a wall essentially. And it looks a little odd right now, but I think by the end you'll see it kind of blends in, and I think I might change the colors a little bit, I'm not sure, but to kind of blend it a little better and make it seem uniform. So again, going with this trellis, bringing the same asset over from an existing area of the park that you've seen me build previously, using it again here. And I think it's really important when you work on areas of the park to continuously take elements and assets, as I call them, and kind of reuse them in reason. So you don't want to overdo it, just because then your build looks very repetitive and boring. But you want to keep reminding the viewer or the guest or whoever it would be looking at your park, that you're in this same theme, that the area is uniform and it's a continuation of the same theme. So if you get too crazy mixing and matching colors and styles and different elements, then you kind of lose sight of that overarching theme. So that's the idea here. I think I'm about reached my limit for the amount of wooden trellis work I can put on this island before it's diving into the repetitive, I guess, issue. So this is the last trellis, I think, that I build. But it's just the same piece in different orientations as you've seen me build in previous episodes. That wooden pillar is a really good piece for this type of stuff, and you can just mix and match it in all sorts of different ways. And just by taking those upper, I guess, beam wooden pillars and raising them up so they look like they're sitting on top of the beams below, that gives a lot of nice texture and variation, and it just makes it look more alive. I keep harping back on that about texture. I think I use the word texture 8 times in every video. I need to think of a better word sometimes to describe certain things. But anyway, I keep harping back to that because at everything you do, it's really important. If you want to make that stunning look, that unique look that people are like, whoa, that doesn't even look like Planet Coaster, you really got to focus on focusing on changing the style, changing the elevation, just adding like a little bit of just extra, going that extra mile, I guess, that extra step to just make things a little off. So like the roof, changing the tiles just slightly, rotating them, raising them up just a little bit to give it that variation. Anytime you start seeing something look very repetitive, that's when you're going to start. That's when you got to mix it up just a little bit. So I'm hoping I'm doing that here. By no means I'm not an expert. This is just all these tips and tricks I try to give you all are just my attempt to share a little bit about how I build and I design. And if you don't like anything I'm doing, then don't pay any mind to what I'm saying. But if you do like what I'm doing, I'm hoping I can give you some advice and help you become a better builder yourself. Or if you're just watching this as a lover of the game or sandbox in general, I hope this is enjoyable content and you can really get excited to see the way this turns out. So the roof here, same roof, again, like I talked about, bringing that asset over. And really, the rest of this building, my goal was to try to make it a little bit different. So I'm reusing the same pieces, but I'm also trying to give it a little bit of uniqueness. And I think I do that here with a little bit of color variation, a little bit of detail variation on the side buildings, which will be coming soon. Just adding a few elements here and there to give it a little more character. Another thing would be just adding that stonework and that wooden beamwork kind of on the bottom in the shape of the building, of course, makes it stand out as unique. So as far as realism goes in the park, this will probably be some sort of storage shed for the not open to guests, of course, just for the workers, lifeguards, to keep extra chairs, towels, tubes, whatever. They wouldn't have tubes over here. I guess mats for the mat racer. Whatever it may be. Storage is pretty important, actually, in most realistic parks. They always have to have a place to keep things. That's something that people don't really think about. It's just as simple as it sounds, having a place that they can just keep whatever it may be, that, because those workers aren't going to take that stuff home with them. So they have to have a place to keep their, the things that the park needs to run, like towels and chairs and, like I said, all those things. So again, with just the barrels here, I try to keep these a little limited, use them sparingly, again, to avoid that repetition. But I think it's a really nice piece that just seems to fit with almost any theme you do, which is why, well, maybe not sci-fi, but which is why I tend to always be using those. And if I'm using them too much, let me know so I can adjust. Sometimes that's a trap I often find myself in, is using the barrel too often. So I took some more of the rock work and I brought it over here. I wanted to make this rock jagged appearance kind of a little more prevalent in the front section of the island as well as just the back. Right now, the island sort of looks like you have that rocky back area, and then you just have this nice open, flat, very like city-looking front, and that's not what I'm trying to go for here. I want that jagged rockwork to be kind of present all over the island. So I'm going to be bringing more of that into the build here in the next couple episodes. So in the center area here of Storm Rock, I wanted to add some, I guess, pool chairs. Again, I went with a different color though on these, just because we're kind of away from the beacon racers now and we're moving into just the main center area of the island. So I think you'll see more in the cinematics. I do go back and I add a wall here. Maybe that's, yeah, okay. So I wanted to add these chairs and I wanted to add a place to put them. And the difficulty here was that it was kind of hard for me to figure out where these chairs could go that weren't going to be blocking the guest walkways and kind of be right in the middle. So what I ended up doing is I built a little wall, and you'll see this very soon. I built a little wall that kind of walled them in, made them kind of their own little area. And it's just a half wall, just a wall you'd be able to see over, but I think it just kind of segments it off. This is another thing I think I don't see a whole lot of people do, but it's actually really useful. Anytime you have like a big open plaza, people get stuck in this mindset of like, oh, I don't know how to fill this plaza with stuff. And, you know, maybe they start with some planters or a centerpiece, but sometimes you just have so much space and you don't really know what you could put in the middle of it. And I think people get caught up a little bit in thinking too much of it as this open space that's pre-existing that they have to fill. And instead, you should think of it more as this is open area that you can then segment into more things if you need to. So you could always put a building right in the center of your plaza, or you could, like I did, segment that off with some walls. And you're still keeping that plaza look by having them only be like low to the ground, half walls height. But you're creating another space that can be used for something else that's not just the plaza. So it's kind of like a happy medium, I guess. And it just depends on your situation. Maybe that wouldn't make sense in some areas, but I think in this case it worked out pretty well. So I'm now starting on the fence that we have been desperately needing for a couple episodes now. And I wanted to use pretty simple pieces, pretty simple materials. I think the rope is a pretty great piece to use for this area of the park because you're out on an island. Lighthouses, nautical theme. You have a lot of ropes. That's kind of part of that nautical theme. So I think the ropes just work really well here. And then just again that wooden pillar piece, keeping that same color, being consistent with the color. That's a big thing. If I were to change that dark brown to just like a slightly different shade of brown, you would notice that right away. So keeping that dark brown the same as the trellis, it shows that it was probably made from the exact same wooden pieces, which would be how it would be in real life, right? They would make the fence poles out of the same pieces that they're making the trellis. It's the same material, it's the same wood, it's the same dimensions, so it makes sense. Again, throwing it on this side of the wall too, we hadn't had a fence here for the longest time, and if anyone realized that, then they would be happy to see that the guests can now not easily, I should say, walk off and break their leg by falling onto the level below. So here I wanted to add just a little more undulation in the rock, a little more variation, just a slightly taller little spire there of the rock, just to give it a little more variety because I thought it was looking a little repetitive with the rock work surrounding the island there. Now the one nice thing, anytime you do a custom fence like this, my tip for a fence like this would be when you're going down, or if you know you're going to include a slanted area such as this ramp, it's very nice to use like a pole or a pillar or some sort of piece for the pole of the fence, because you can sink it into the ground and give that kind of stair step it down in height, rather than keeping the pole, I guess, perpendicular to the surface. If you instead just keep it vertical and just sink it down as you go down the ramp, you can create that same look on the down, like as you go down the ramp. I hope that made sense. Sometimes I start trying to explain something and then I realize it's not as easy to explain as I thought. So that's why this is all a learning experience for me too. Here we are including some stairs to continue the queue line up to the beacon racers themselves. These actually took me a lot longer than I thought they would, and that's just the nature of custom assets and things that you do custom in this game, is they take a really long time just because they're so tedious to be accurate with them. So this is one of the smallest pieces in the game, the smallest haunted house wooden pillar. I believe this would be from the I don't know what DLC this is from. Someone comment below if you know what DLC this is from. I'm all mixed up. But anyway, just using it really over and over just to create the actual platform, the walkway, I guess. And we'll then come back here with some more wooden pillars to support the fragile looking planks underneath them. And again, using this wooden pillar as for the fence or railing as you go up the walkway. The nice thing about making these custom stairways is that you can make them kind of go whatever way you need to. Anytime you make something custom in Planet Coaster, you're always at the advantage of you can tailor it to whatever shape you need. So if you're, for example, when you're doing the real path work, it's very difficult. I would not be able to take the Planet Coaster path and bring it up in the shape that I'm doing right now. So by instead just making a fake path, although the guests won't actually walk up here, it does allow you to be a little more creative in how you wind your paths and access ways and walkways and all those realistic elements that you would want to include. This is a way to kind of wind them and put them where you need to. So, like I said before, the guests will not be walking up here, and they will not be riding the slides, and they will not be riding any slides in this park because we do not have the ability for them to do that. Maybe in a future game, Frontier game, I don't know if they're ever going to do a Planet water park or whatever they would call it. And I'm not one to speculate on that stuff. I'm not going to make much comment on if I think that would be a thing they would do and why, but it would be pretty cool. But it would also make my park not very exciting anymore, would it? Because we would have the real deal. Anyway, I'm going on a side tangent. So, as you can see, this is really taking me a long time just to make this simple stairway, and that's kind of how... That's something that we'll probably see a lot, and I'll probably start cutting out, actually, if I continue to do a stairway of this sort with the same pieces. I'm trying to be pretty aware and conscious of what things I'm showing and what things I'm cutting out. I do want to make sure I include every aspect of the build, but I also don't want to include repetitive footage that's 10 minutes and not worth the viewer's time. So I think here I may have cut out some of the railing work I did here, just using that same railing fence across the board that I've built. And this is kind of the continuation of the queue line where the entrance will be. And you probably noticed there's a big sign that says Beacon Racers right there, and I totally forgot to record that piece of me building that, so my apologies. But I can tell you that it's the wooden bracket piece, basically just duplicated around to make those letters, and then once you create the entire sign, you can duplicate the whole sign, sink it in just a little bit, and change the color to kind of make that that stroke trim on the outside. I think the formal term might be called a stroke when it comes to font. It's the extra little outline of the font that's a different color, essentially. So I did not include that footage, my apologies, but I will be doing some more work on the sign here at the end of the episode coming up, and because I liked the sign, but I felt like it needed just a little more something, and I'm beginning it right now. So I'm not going to give away what it is that I'm making here, and I just want to let you kind of see this progress. It is not a big smiley face, I can promise you that. It's just a little symbolic thing that I wanted to add to the sign, and this is something that I want to do more on my custom sign work. I feel like custom sign work is like half of the time and effort. It feels like signs can be very time consuming, and you don't realize how many signs that you really have in the game. And once you start doing custom signs, you no longer want to use the in-game sign pieces. Sometimes I feel like oh, I need to do a custom sign, and really I just shouldn't need to worry about it. But I think once you go down that road, it's hard to do it any other way. So even custom signs, after a while, if you use kind of the same font, the same pieces to make them, they can get a little boring. I mean, you only have so many small pieces in the game. In fact, I actually have a tag when I search for scenery where I have all the smaller pieces that I could find. I have them tagged as tiny, so I just search tiny to pull up the smallest pieces that I can anytime I need to make something custom out of small pieces. That's kind of my shortcut way to find them. But so to make those custom signs a little more interesting, one thing I want to try to do a little more is, I guess I'm going to call it branding, but it's not just about the font, right? So when you make like a custom sign, think of like any amusement park or water park you walk up. It's not always about the font and the letters that make the sign. Oftentimes it's about what catches your eye, or what really makes it what it is more the symbol or the picture or the figurehead of whatever, however you want to call it, whatever it is of that attraction. I'm trying to think of a good example. Most signs have or rides or attractions they don't just have a sign and a name, but they also have some sort of symbol or brand that goes with them. So for the Beacon Racers, obviously the brand is the lighthouse. So this is kind of my attempt to add sort of that brand to the sign itself. And if you haven't figured it out yet, it is a sunset that I have made here. And I'm going to try to do a silhouette of sorts of a lighthouse itself. And it's pretty simple, actually, just with the simple pieces. Tried to make it a little bit curved, just to give it, again, make it look a little more like a lighthouse. Messed around with the base a little bit here, just went with those hemispheres to kind of make it look like it's perched on a rock. And this is my favorite part. I went with this very beige color to represent the light, and I think this turned out really good, actually. I didn't expect it to turn out that great, but you have to let me know what you think. But this is, I think, my favorite part of the episode. I just really liked how this sign ended up turning out at the end. One thing you can do, here's another tip, as I'm showing you right now, if you ever need to make like a curve, like I was trying to follow the curve of that circle there, you can always take just one of the smaller hemisphere pieces and duplicate that around just like the edge of it to kind of make that curved look. And it's not perfect, and I realized that you could kind of tell, so what I did here is I just made like a slight border around it, just raised it just enough to cover it up, so then you get that perfect circle. Again, using that circular technique where you put one shape on one side and rotate it, copy it to the other, and then you can just center point will be in the center of the circle, and you can just duplicate them around to make a perfect circle. Super important if you're ever trying to do circular artwork that you know that trick. What I didn't do here is I did not build on the world axis, so I had to finagle that a little bit to get it to rotate. I should have built that on the world axis. That was a mistake. But so then I just bring it behind the letters there, and I mess with it a little bit here, and you'll see in the cinematics the final product. But I think it just adds a lot to the sign, just to give it a little bit of a backdrop. I did go ahead and try to make it a little more realistic by adding a support on the back. In real life, this would be a heavy wind area out on the island, very exposed. They would have high winds over here, so you would definitely need to be bracing a sign like this, or it would be blown all across the map. So, getting close to the end of the episode, there is a couple more things I do. Next, we're going to be moving into some lighting. One thing I have not done really at all on this park yet is lighting, and there are some amazing people out there that are super good at making the lighting just look so great. I cannot say that I'm an expert at lighting, but I do pay mind to it, and I think it's important, and I try not to forget it. As usual, here we're going with a custom lamppost, and this is probably the nerdiest thing I'm going to say in this episode, but making custom lamps is probably one of my favorite things to do in Planet Coaster, and I don't know why. I think it's just such a simple shape, and when you duplicate those things around, it just looks so real, and like it just takes your park to the next level. I don't know, I'm just geeking out about lamps here, but I went with the manhole piece because I wanted a really nice small circle, and I just copy and pasted, duplicated it to create that smooth texture on both sides. Used the wooden bracket to cut that gap between the manhole cover and the wooden beam because I needed a smaller wooden piece. The 1 meter wooden pillar wasn't going to work. The brackets can be really good for that, especially that small bracket. You can use those things in so many different ways. And then I did add a little bit of cabling here, whether this would actually be the real cabling or if they would keep it housed inside the wooden pillar itself. I'll leave that up to you to decide, but I think either way it adds a lot of character. Kind of makes it look stormy to me, that out on the island it's kind of rugged. The cables are showing, the lamp's got that metal top to it. So that's the lamp, and here I am just duplicating these around. And another thing that I realized as I was building, and I'm not sure if this is on this footage or not, but I realized there needed to be a way to get equipment, and because this is my work side of me coming out. These water parks have quite the complex mechanical room that has to be underneath them. You have a lot of equipment, a lot of pumps for all the different slides and etc. And out here on the island, there's not really much of like a backstage area because it's an island, and I didn't really build that in. So we're pretending here that the backstage, the equipment room, the HVAC, that kind of stuff, it would be underneath this elevated deck. So I realized there needed to be a way not only to get in there to access it like a door, but also a large enough door and a way for vehicles to drive up here and bring in equipment that they would need. So most backstage areas actually have a road network, and they're quite large. So what I decided to do here is I figured a vehicle could probably drive over this bridge onto the island and the plaza. It was not going to be able to get up those ramps though, so I had to make an access point kind of on the main lower level. And what I ended up doing is I just added a big double door on the side of the wall there, and I don't know if you'll see it or not, but it's just by that netting, and I figured the netting they could just take out temporarily. They could move it to get in there, and it could be just a movable portable piece, and that would be a large enough door for them to get a vehicle or a piece of equipment into the room that way. So that's kind of my plan. I'm not going to do anything as far as, I'm not going to detail any equipment or anything inside the thing, inside the wall there, but that was just my thought process for how that would work. Here, just working on some more lighting. One trick, and I do it here, that's very helpful, is don't necessarily think of the lights as necessarily being where the light has to come from. You can place a light up above like I did, that small box light. It looks like a real light. It looks very realistic. And then you just turn it off, and you take these larger area lights and you just sink them into the ground. And if you get the coloring very dark, you got to really turn it down. It gives the illusion that the light is coming from the lights above and not the lights that are sunk in below. My bad. So that's a nice trick. I'm going to do it a lot. Anytime you have an interior space, it's super helpful for that, because those lights just don't look that great on the ceiling. They don't look very real. So here I went with the spotlight. I use this one a lot when I'm trying to make it look like it's a real spotlight that would actually be there to light an area up, because it has that look of like, it looks just like a real spotlight that they would have. So I added just some hints of green. I did not want to overdo it, just in a couple areas here, just to give it a little light. It was just so dark in some of these corners, and it's kind of got that nautical, oceany feel to it, and I'm all right with it, as long as I don't overdo it. I think it's okay to use a little bit of teal there in reason. So we are about here at the end. Just a few little touches that I'm adding here, and this will complete the Beacon Racers area. The upper level here Lighting is typically the last thing I do, so with the lighting out of the way, I think the sign is the last thing I light up, and that will be the end of the episode. So thank you for watching, everyone. Thank you so much. Leave a comment. Give me a like if you feel I deserve it. Stay tuned for the next episode. I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.